Meeple Talk! Hello everyone, I'm Stephanie.
I'm Adam.
And welcome to Meeple Talk. This week we've got Ho.
Yes. So here's a game where there's hope for the universe in 3 dimensions. Maybe, depending on how well you play. So, yes, and so this is a game by, I always read on the box to make sure I get the names right, Olivier Grégoire, who's the designer, and the artist Marcelo Bastos. This is a French game. It was on a Kickstarter, and it was delivered in 2018, very recently. So, in this game, the players cooperatively are trying to save the universe by populating various planets, because the more life there is in the universe, the better.
It counters the regression.
The regression, which is indicated by this evil-looking black monolith. And players also can individually win the game by having by colonizing the most galaxies in the universe. So this is a really interesting game, and we're going to tell you more about it, and then we'll give you our reviews.
Let's dive right in.
So here we have the 3 dimensions of the universe of the game board of H.O.P.E. First of all, you can see all of these different tiles here are various galaxies in the universe, and each of the different colors, the red, blue, and purple, represent 3 different dimensions of the universe. So players each have a cockpit, and on the cockpit they have various levers that allow them to move their ship forward, away from, or side to side relative to the dimension that they're on and the gravity. They also have a character card in the center that gives them various bonuses. Here you have tracks that you can upgrade with your metals to give you additional movements and additional cards in your hand, these technology cards. So now we can move on to, I guess we'll mention the various... We're using these characters, these pioneers, to indicate where you are on this track, but the pioneers are also, you have a big group of them here, and those are placed on the board in order to colonize the various planets in each of the galaxies. So you see these little gummy things. They look like gummies to me, but anyway, these are planets in the various dimensions. So as you move, you will place these pioneers on there. And this is your ship. Everyone has their own ship, and the ships are all different cool shapes. Therefore, in order to place them there, you have to have matching technology cards. Over here, we have the various technology cards laid out. And this is the deck here to refill these. Every player starts with, I believe, 5 of these. And you can increase your hand limit here, as I mentioned. This is the monolith, the regression monolith. And this regression monolith will be destroying galaxies as we go through the game. Over here we have the mission track. The mission track also has a small monolith. Well, I guess it's not a monolith, it's a regression marker. But anyway, this is the regression track, this wavy one. And the regression will be working through there. And the pioneers, after they stabilize galaxies, will be put in the center here. Here we have the medals that you can win. When you have 3 or 4 or 5 medals, you can upgrade your tracks here on your cockpit. And this is an additional item. It's just a suction cup, so that when you need to stabilize or flip over a tile, you can just use the suction cup to flip it over. And finally, we have a first player marker here. I should also mention there's a couple of variant options that you can add to the game. This is the bug deck, a series of bugs that will come up during the game. And also, we have these roll cards. And these are dealt out to players at the beginning, and one player may be a traitor. So that's all the components.
And Adam was mentioning that, yes, the regression is going to be represented by this monolith, and its goal is to, from the perimeter and slowly, hopefully spiral in, is to completely consume and destroy the universe one galaxy at a time. We are essentially on a race to beat that. How we do that is that every player, you'll notice that the board is comprised of 3 dimensions, the blue, the purple, and the red. every time we move, we're going to be moving along one dimension at a time until we do something like a polarization that allow us to change a dimension, but it's all going to focus on primarily one at a time. So as we move, let's say, for example, we're going to use green. Green wants to move away or to what we refer to as the gravity point. This is your reference point of how your movements are going to be performed. So everyone on their lever has functions like towards the gravity point, away, lateral movement, and also sort of a wildcard movement. As you expend or have them available, they'll be indicated by the positions on your board. So if I choose, for example, green, I want to move towards, I'm going to expend my movement for the towards gravity point, and I'll be traveling on any purple space that is in that direction towards that gravity point. If I want to colonize any of these purple positions along the way, I would have to expend a card that matches that particular technology symbol. Let's say, for example, I've got my yellow card and I want to place a pioneer here. I was traveling on purple, so I'm going to colonize one of those planets. As I use my cards, that's where we go to the technology board here. I will then have to choose where I discard, and it's going to be determined by two things. One is, well, what kind of technology card do I want to pick up and have in my draw pile for later? Or how many of these regression symbols are showing, do I want to cover any of these up? Because as we place, you'll have some that might be fewer in number because of placements or with new draws of cards. Oh, look at that. Even though I wanted to replace one, it looks like I got one right back, and I'll explain why that's important later. So that will become part of my new draw pile. In this example, I want to go to why we're colonizing these planets. Here we have an example of all of us. We have now colonized fully this particular galaxy. There are awards like medals that you can earn when colonizing, but once a galaxy is fully colonized, this becomes flipped over and it becomes a protected zone. The very first time it gets flipped, you'll get an extra bonus tile. You might be able to get whatever these bonus actions or features are for the next person who travels through that area. But these characters now, these pioneers that have successfully colonized, will be placed along this mission track. Like so. Also what happens is that as players go, and I mentioned those cards, let's go back to the cards over here. When I mentioned when a turn is finished, everyone's going to be taking turns placing cards, drawing new technology cards, and once that happens, any of these regression symbols that are still revealed, in this case 4, that's going to indicate the number of movement that this regression token is going to move. It will also represent, if it's going to be eating a galaxy, how many galaxies is going to travel along after it's destroyed the current position. When we mentioned it's a race, that's why this is important. Any time that the regression is going to be traveling along this track and we already have pioneers beating the intersection, the cross point, then the regression continues to move, but no galaxies are going to be destroyed at that point. If it came to be that there was a lot of movement here and then the intersection now is open, that's when the regression is actually going to destroy its current position. If this progresses as throughout the game, we get to the final end point. If we have the number of pioneers essentially outpacing the regression, then we all collectively win. There is a final winner, however, and that's represented by the highest number of the same colored pioneer. That particular player will be the ultimate winner. However, if the regression reaches the end before we have all met, then we all lose collectively. So it's a game that you really need to work through together, and essentially that's how it goes.
All right, we're back.
Yeah. So, and I guess if we dive right in pretty much into the layout of the game, it's really slick looking. It's one of those things that a lot of times when you see Kickstarter games, just how impressive startups have really been getting in their designs. I mean, these are smartly made. These figures are fantastic. The artwork on these cards are absolutely beautiful. And one of the things that really intrigued me at first was the concept of the limitation of movement through the 3 dimensions. I like that. So when you think of spatial awareness, movement with relativity to a gravity point. I like this idea of restricting, I think this, and then shifting and doing the polarization to change your dimensions. I think it really adds to this theme of space-time and how these different galaxies can be navigated. So I thought as a concept, it was a really unique idea that I was excited to try. There were some tricky things, though, when going into this level of movement, is that the rules themselves needed a bit of work. And so we had a hard time trying to, at first, understand what kind of movements were allowed. So when you think about moving to or from a gravity point, is it as straight as possible as the crow flies? Or is there some checkering or zigzagging capability? How wide can you go in that movement to get to your final destination? So we had unfortunately some, not necessarily arguments, but we had to do a lot of rule referencing with some unclearly written rules that we just sort of had to argue back and forth with what would be really a valid movement to go, or what path you can go with. Yeah. I think, you had some similar.
Yeah, so I feel like the rules, the rules were a really big issue in this game, and even after our third game, we still, I don't know if we were playing it right, because there are so many situations where the rules just don't cover it. For example, the monolith moving along the side, determining when the monolith can move, when it can't move. What happens if something is, for example, if a couple of these are destroyed? Is the monolith then moving like this, counting this spot, going to this spot, coming back to this spot, and going to that spot? And then what if the monolith then destroys this spot? None of these things are covered in the rules. There's a lot of things in the bug deck, especially. This is the optional bug deck where when you stabilize a galaxy, then you pull up one of these cards, and it's either good or bad, and you can pay medals to get the good or avoid the bad effect.
Yeah.
And a lot of these are worded where you have no idea what the card is trying to say. There's no way to find out what the card is actually, what it actually means, and how to implement those rules. And the movement especially, and polarizing, when you polarize to a different color, you have to go to a particular spot on that new color. And it's not clear if there's two colors that are equally close, which one you're supposed to go to. And I felt like the rules were not play tested in the same way that the game was play tested. And the rules were so problematic that we just couldn't figure out how to play it for a long time.
So some perfect examples that Adam was mentioning is that because these tiles are random, even though they have specific orientation markers of what direction they're supposed to face, they're not all designed in the same way. So you will get patterns of maybe clusters of the same color where maybe you can have lateral movement, but sometimes you'll have gaps in areas where movement is not possible. So when it comes to things like polarization, depending on the orientation of what is around you, a certain type of movement, which would be considered your next closest tile in the direction of the, gravity point of where you're going to be shifting to, may not be viable, perhaps. It may not be necessarily clear or where you want to go. So there was a lot of debate about that. And also when Adam was mentioning this concept of the how you navigate the monolith token, we didn't have it come to an extreme of this kind yet, but there was a possibility that when we talk about moving around the perimeter, what exactly counts as a perimeter piece? What if a token is gone and then the next one, just mathematically how it turned out, the next one to be eaten is going to be coming in here, and all of a sudden you're going to start to create a cavity. What happens in that instance? Are we still focusing on should it just be the perimeter, or can it create a cavity situation where you're really limiting the movement that now can be made? Island possibilities and things like that. So we haven't played enough to really see how it comes about, but we would really like to have that clarity. Also, as Adam was mentioning with these bug cards, some of them seem, okay, pretty good deals if they're a positive bug card, sort of negative if they weren't, but the cost to either take advantage of some of the benefits or to negate some of the negative benefits, it seemed like the cost for medals seemed to be pretty high for
Yeah.
not really that much of a worth of a benefit, especially when it came to card
Yeah.
swapping opportunity.
And that's another good point. Like these two variants, both I would consider not a positive benefit to the game, in the sense that I think we pulled 5 or 6 cards in the third game when we played with the bug deck, and in no case do we say, wow, we're going to spend 4 metals to get this benefit or to avoid this thing. Because once you stabilize another galaxy, which might happen in a couple turns, then that benefit is covered over and is no longer in effect.
Yeah.
So we felt like that was not well designed.
Just keep colonizing.
And then the trader part as well. If you are the trader, it seems like I mean, we only played it once, so I mean, maybe we could have gotten a better chance by playing it more often. But
if I can interrupt for a sec,
sure.
the general idea behind the trader is that depending on the number of players, you're going to randomly pick a card, which could mean you're part of the main group or you are a trader. If you happen to be a trader, what your goal is to, in a way, try to sabotage the progress of the group with hopefully not trying to be called out because it'll restrict your abilities after that once you're discovered. But also try to colonize as much as you can on the main galaxy without having your players on the progress track. You will win if you succeed in having the regression, beat the pioneers and have the most players on the board.
However, if the regression wins and you don't have the most colonists on the galaxy board, then nobody wins, right? Yeah. So essentially, the moment you introduce those cards, it's no longer really a cooperative game because all the players can't win. But I guess everyone except the trader could win, and then one of those could be the big winner. Yeah. So, but we even found that playing the game, by the rules, assuming we were using the right rules, and I'm still not 100% on a lot of the rules, but it seemed very easy to beat regression. So it was really more of a competitive game where you're trying to get the most number of colonists on the track here. Go ahead.
So overall, like if I give my overall impression of the game, I was really excited. I thought the concept seemed initially quite interesting on how the movement could be, but I feel like it's a lost opportunity that if another game was maybe devised around it with these kinds of movements, I thought, hey, maybe that could be a mechanic that would really turn into something awesome. But I felt very kind of underwhelmed, or like it was fine playing the game, but that's the feeling I ever got at best was it's fine. And I don't know if that's influenced a lot of because of a lot of time we had to go over the rules, argue with the rules and whatnot, that it just took away from any excitement that it may have had, even with things like traders or other variants. So in the end, I never really got the chance to really run with a good feeling while playing this game. It just sort of, went. And that's just sort of my overall feeling.
Yeah, my overall feeling was that while it looks impressive, I felt that even assuming we were playing with the right rules and the rules were not an issue, I think the base game is a solid strategy game with a little bit of downtime because there's not much you can do while other players are playing. But I think it's unique and interesting. But the rules really killed it, and it's unfortunate because it looks like there's so much effort put into this game. But, so overall, I would say, I mean, if we're getting into ratings, I would probably give this like a 5.5, and most of that is the difficulty with the rules, and the rest of it is that it's an interesting game. It's unique, but, it's not exciting. I wouldn't say, let's play it again. It really didn't give me that feeling, so.
And I was originally going to give it a little more generously. Maybe 6.5 was my initial impression. I would like to give it the benefit of the doubt that being a Kickstarter, if there is a new version or rewrite, maybe a bit of a tweaking, maybe it'll have potential to have better. So I'm allowing it a little bit more generously with the scoring. It just feels like it's just a bit of a missed opportunity. So. If there is an opportunity to revise, absolutely, we would give it another go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so that's our review.
That is our review.
Thank you so much for watching.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.